Hello, YouTube. Before you join Conectiv, watch this video. I've got some bad news, and I'm not doing this on purpose. And actually, I have a low embarrassment threshold, and it embarrasses me to report this to you, but I'm going to anyway. I want to give you some background first about Conectiv. In February of 2026, and by the way, this recording is in mid-May 2026, the multi-level marketing MLM company iGenius rebranded itself to Conectiv, purporting to connect its members to a balanced life, whatever that means. But I need to back a little further to December of 2025, in which the already shrinking iGenius organization shrank dramatically when its largest distributor group, Game Changers, bolted to create Go AI, taking with it the largest percentage of distributors in the company. That brings us to today, the 16th of May 2026, when the shell company for InvestView, and I use this word deliberately, Anthony Napolitano on the top of the pyramid in Conectiv has referred to InvestView repeatedly as a shell company, and in fact it is. InvestView is Conectiv. Conectiv is InvestView for all intents and purposes. In any case, they reported to the SEC, their SEC filing 10Q, their quarterly report for the first quarter of 2026, January to March of that year. Now, if you have a lower embarrassment threshold than I do, just click off, because this is really bad. What happened essentially is that the revenue in Conectiv collapsed. The total revenue fell from about $10 million in the first quarter of 2025 to $3.9 million in the first quarter of 2026. And that is a decline year over year of 61%. Subscription revenue, and this is basically what underpins this whole shell company, this was $8.79 million in the first quarter of 2025. In the first quarter of 2026, they recorded only $2.74 million in subscription revenue. That is a decline, folks, of 69% year over year. InvestView is in a deep hole. They reported a net loss of $4.1 million. Now, they also, in the first quarter of 2025, had lost money, but it was only $890,000. The operating losses were also bad. They lost $2.79 million in operating costs, and that's down from only $410,000 loss in the first quarter of 2025. Now, in terms of their expenses, this is actually a really bad sign, and I hope that I can explain this. The three categories, salaries, professional fees, and general and administrative, comprise 93% of the total revenue that the company made in the first quarter, suggesting that they are about to hit the hard limit where they are not making enough revenue to cover fixed costs. That is, the salaries they need to pay, the professional fees to the so-called market experts, their lawyers, their accountant, and their general and administrative fees, unless they sell off assets. And I hope I will make reference to this a little bit later. Okay, deferred revenue. Why do I talk about deferred revenue? Because as Conectiv does not tell you how many distributors they have, you need to use deferred revenue as an index, as a pointer to estimate distributor number. And their deferred revenue based on only subscriptions to Conectiv was $588,754 in the first quarter of 2026, and that implies a subscriber number of roughly 3,300 people. That's it. That is what's left of once mighty InvestView, and once mighty iGenius, I should say, at its peak substantially larger than this. The company is also draining cash extremely fast. Cash fell from almost $10 million to under $5 million in just one quarter. So they are probably going to have to sell assets in order to stay afloat. In other words, their Bitcoin mining business, and possibly also, if they can find a seller, this almost inexplicable purchase of a stake in a mini nuclear reactor venture, a substantial investment in venture capital. They may have to try to find a buyer if they are able. Or they're going to need to borrow more money from David B. Rothrock, the chairman of the board. And frankly, I'm not going to tell Rothrock how to do his business, but I don't know why he's still shoveling money into this losing venture. Excuse me. Unfortunately, there are more ominous signs on the horizon. In this 10Q report, in their defense, InvestView tried to argue that something that might help save them is the addition of two distributor groups. And what they had to have meant was Envision U, featuring David Immonitier, and Vibe Networks, which also joined under David. And that was a failed MLM led by the Lynch twins, Megan and Reagan. Unfortunately, very recently, David Immonitier has started promoting coaching services. Now, this does not mean that he's getting ready to bolt from Conectiv, but it's never a good sign. And of course, a spillover, as I've mentioned in previous videos, OBG, the Orange Beanie Global, which is now currently the largest distributor group following the departure of Game Changers, and led by Alex Lugo, has continued to self-brand themselves. In other words, when they do opportunity calls, they do not mention the parent company. They self-brand as OBG, and they have stated publicly that they are refusing to sell coffee and cosmetics. Folks, your skills, knowledge, and experience are too valuable to waste in an MLM. That's all I got. I'll see you in the next one.